Today we're going to learn how to solve quadratic equations using the zero product property. So our first example, we have two factors that are, when they multiply together, equal to 0. So the zero product property says that when we have two things that are equal to 0, when we multiply them together, then one of them must be 0, or both. So let's try it out. We're going to do x minus 2. Now all we have to do is split our two factors so that we're creating two pretty simple equations, actually. And then we go ahead and solve them. So our one quadratic equation, since it's factored, we can split into two simpler equations. I add 2 to both sides, plus 2, I get x plus 2. And then if I subtract 3 over here, I get x equals negative 3. And I've got my two answers. Okay, so if we were to plug 2 back in to this equation, that first parentheses would go to 0. So it'd be 0 times, well, in this case, 0 times 5. And 0 times 5 does equal 0. That's true. If we plug in negative 3 in for the x in both of them, then we get negative 5 negative 5 times 0 equals 0. So again, that one works too. So quadratic equations actually sometimes have more than one right answer. And so our answers are actually both of them. We have one answer that's x equals 2 and the other that's x equals negative 2. Let's look at another example. We have, again, two parentheses and they equal 0. All we have to do, since they equal 0 and they're already two things that are multiplied together, we write our two equations. X plus 3 equals 0. And we write x minus 9 equals 0. And then we solve those like a pretty simple equation. I'm going to subtract 3 from both sides. And I get x equals negative 3. And then I can go ahead and add 9. And I get x equals 9. And we're done. So we actually end up with two answers. So sometimes you see them written as a solution set where it's like negative 3, comma 9. Notice that these don't have parentheses around them, because if they had parentheses, then they'd be an ordered pair like an x and a y, but these are both x's. Example 3, we have only one set of parentheses, but you'll notice that we have really two things that are multiplied together. So we have a monomial times a binomial. I'm going to go ahead and write my two equations as 3x equals 0 and x plus 1 equals 0. If I subtract 1 from both sides, I get x equals negative 1. If I go over here and I can divide both sides by 3, and I get x equals 0 divided by 3 is 0. So I get my two factors. If I wanted to write them as a solution set with little curly braces, I could go ahead and go 0, comma, negative 1. I could have put them negative 1, comma, 0 because the order doesn't matter. These aren't x's and y's. This is just a list of the x's. Now one more example for you. In this one, again, two things that are multiplied together to give us 0. So we can split them up and get x plus 4 equals 0 and 2x minus 3 equals 0. I'm going to do the simple one first, minus 4 from both sides. And I get x equals negative 4. Now the second one actually has two steps, so I'm going to add 3, and I get 2x equals 3. Now I'm going to go ahead and divide by 2, and I get x equals 3 halves, or 1.5. And both of those are my answers, so I'm going to go ahead and write them in curly brackets as negative 4, comma, 3 halves. And that's it. Today we learned how to solve quadratic equations using the zero product property. Continue to learn abundantly.